thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus.
It's here.
It's here.
It's finally here. Adventist Television Network is here. The one-stop network for Christians or anyone wanting to learn how they can develop a more meaningful relationship with Christ. Tune in to Central Cable for daily programs on health and wellness, current events, relationships, spiritual growth, and of course, musical praise, all catering to our local urban audience.
The book of Revelation depicts God's people as flying in the midst of heaven as angels, proclaiming the everlasting gospel. ATN will allow you to reach the world with God's message and reap the harvest. But more, it will help you to grow as a disciple. It will keep you connected with your church. Above all things, it will prepare you to meet Jesus when he comes.
ATN is a non-profit initiative. If you want to do your small part in reaching people with the good news of Jesus, you can partner with ATN by offering your generous tax-deductible gifts. Adventist Television Network is an official partner of 3ABN's Dare to Dream Network. Keep up with special services, programs, and events brought to you by the local Seventh-day Adventist Church on Central Cable and streaming on Central Belize Mission Facebook and YouTube pages.
Brothers and sisters, we are looking forward for your financial support to the Adventist Television Network.
ATN and Dare to Dream, the urban Christian lifestyle television.
Hi, I'm Pastor Emiliano Viamel.
And I'm Elder Shane Neal. And we're the hosts of Hour of Power. We are ready to pray for you and with you.
Prayer is the key that unlocks heaven's door. In Philippians 4, 6, and 7, God cautions us not to be anxious about anything.
Instead, in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus.
Join us every Thursday night at 6 p.m. on our Facebook and YouTube pages, as well as Channel 98 on Central Cable TV, to experience this peace that passeth all understanding. You can join our global prayer family by praying that God continues to lead and bless this ministry.
By becoming a faithful viewer and inviting your friends and family to like and share our programs.
With your kind donations as well as your generous financial contributions.
Contact us at 501-613-9351
or send us an email at atn@cbm.belizeunion.org.
We are located at 10 3/4 miles Northern Highway at the Tubal Trade and Vocational Institute. Thank you for being a part of the ATN ministry.
And we pray God's richest blessings upon you and your family.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of Defining Your Health. I'm your host, Tracy Lewis, and I have on set with me the lovely Angelia Guy, who will be sharing with us some finance tips for this holiday. The Christmas season is here, and I know we want to shop until we drop, but we need to budget. All right, so Angelia Guy will be sharing a presentation with us about budgeting simplified, so she'll give us the full breakdown. But before we get into that, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, Angelia.
Okay. My name is Angelia. Like you said, I'm the owner now of a small business called Budgeting Simplified. And I have over 5 years experience in budgeting, personal budgeting. As you know, when we went to how I hope to be able to help others in our community.
Right. I'm so excited, guys, and you're probably wondering why I'm just calling her by her first name, but we're very, very familiar. Me and Miss Guy, Angelia, we went to UWI together. We did our undergraduates together. She studied meteorology. She's actually a meteorologist at the Met Center, and she does forecasting, so you might have heard her voice before. She's also a teacher. She does math, I think, at University of Belize, and right now she's doing a certificate in accounting. So she does a lot, and she wants to share with us this morning about budgeting. All right, so for our viewers, I want to thank you for joining us, and I ask that you continue to share the link and support us. If you have family and friends that you know struggle with finance, or if you think that you can benefit from this program, continue to share the link. And if you're watching on YouTube, click the notification button so that you know every time we go live, the video will be right there. Okay, so Angelia, let's begin. What was your inspiration for budgeting? You mentioned that as an undergraduate student, you started to manage your finance, but how did you make that next step to actually creating an actual initiative from this to help people to finance?
Okay, so like many of our households in Belize, or families in Belize, a lot of us don't grow up learning to save or have savings as a priority in our house.
Okay.
And so I wanted to change that, starting with myself and going further down the line. So to me, when I gain knowledge, it's not just gaining knowledge, it's about applying what I learn, and then if I understand it well enough, I can be able to help others to learn as well. And so personally, I strive for continuous learning, and that is also what I aim to do with Budgeting Simplified. The name came about because...
Yes, I love the name. I love the name.
It's about budgeting, and I want to break it down to make it as simple as possible for the first-time budgeteer.
But what do you call us? First time what?
Budgeteer.
Budgeteers.
Someone who budgets.
Okay.
I had to Google if it was a word, yes.
It is a word, budgeteers.
Yes.
All right, so I hope you have your pen and paper with you. We'll be doing some practical work practice sheets this morning. All right, so let's get into budgeting then. Like, where do we start?
Okay, well, first let's mention the mission of the business is to offer simplified, beginner-friendly budget templates to people. And I want to help our community, our country, one person at a time on a journey to financial awareness. Financial awareness encompasses so much, but it really starts at planning and budgeting.
Okay.
For your goals, it could be short-term goals, long-term goals, anything for the future that you want.
Right. You mentioned before that a part of your inspiration was to help others, and it's not something that we particularly prioritize in our culture. Do you think that as a people, as Belizeans, that we don't have a positive attitude towards budgeting?
Right, like I said, it's not something we grow up seeing in our homes, so it's something that we have to learn on our own or learn from others if we're willing to. And yeah, I want to help other people along the journey.
By sharing how you budget.
Yes.
I think that's a great initiative, because to be honest, I never learned budgeting in school, and maybe it's because I wasn't an accounting student, so I hope I'm not doing any injustice to the business teachers, but I really didn't learn how to do that. And then your parents, they do their best, but they manage it privately, and by the time you're grown, you find a way to do your own thing. So after years of experience, you found something that works, and you'll be sharing that with us. But I also want to interact with our viewers. How do you budget? What's something that you do that you might want to share with us? Just leave it in the comments below, and Miss Guy is here, and so we can probably talk about that a little bit. Go ahead, Miss.
Right, so back to you, you're asking how it really came about. So I budget usually by paper. I'm someone who likes to write things down. You know, when you write things down, you can see clearly where you're going.
You can remember.
And so I was searching on Amazon for a budget planner that would cater to me. I searched YouTube, you know, there's a lot of how-to information on YouTube. I wasn't finding something that I really like in one. So I decided to create my own budget planner, and then afterwards the idea came, why not sell it in order to help other people to learn as simple, break it down as simple as possible so that it's not complicated or overwhelming. Because sometimes dealing with finances, even speaking about finances with other people can become overwhelming for some because they don't know that they can speak freely about it, or they just don't feel
And
they
it's,
need to.
it's a touchy topic because as soon as you try to make suggestions, it makes you feel like you're not doing something right. And for me personally, when people tell me to budget or finance my money, I'm like, no, raise the minimum wage. I mean, how can I finance what I don't have? You know, so I don't know, how would you encourage somebody who believes that, you know what, miss, I simply don't make enough money to be budgeting any money after bills don't pay. What's left to budget? You pay the bills, you buy food, and that's it.
Right, but budgeting is very important, and we'll get into what a budget really is in a few. It's really a plan. So
It's a
you
plan.
plan ahead of spending so that you know how much money is going out, how much money is coming in, where your money is going before it goes out. That way you have a plan and you try to stick with it. And the thing with budgeting, as you mentioned, it's a touchy feeling, but budgeting is personal or family budgeting, or there is organizational budgeting, but I deal with personal budgeting.
Okay.
Your budget will cater to you. What works for me might not work for you. You have to
Personalized.
find what works for you.
Tailor it. All right. Good. So let's get into it. I'm excited.
Okay, I had just a little bit of values about budgeting simplified and
Okay.
what I came up with for the business on a whole, and then we can go into what
Okay.
budgeting is. Okay, so the catchphrase "Let's get it" is like my motto for budgeting simplifies, and it really encompasses a lot of meaning to me, professionally and personally. Like we mentioned in the beginning, I strive for continuous learning, and I always want to be learning and applying what I learn so
Okay.
that we can create a better future for ourselves, for our children, for our children's children. And have you ever learned the term or heard the term generational wealth before?
I have heard it, generational wealth, but usually I've associated it with, I wasn't part of that. You know, that it's unless something was left behind for you, then it's harder for you to start or have a start in life.
Right. So generational wealth to me means more than just money. I mean, you hear the term wealth and you want to associate it with money
Automatically.
automatically. To me, we can leave generational wealth with the knowledge that we already learn, right? So, like I said, I'm learning new things and I want to share that with others. So, if I already learned something, why should I let you figure it out for yourself when I can easily share that knowledge with you because I already understand it, I already experience it, I can share my experience with you, and then you can just figure out how to make it work for you.
Exactly.
So it's the same, you pass it on to your children, your family members, your friends, your community, and then your children don't have to start from scratch.
So when you talk about generational wealth, you're not talking about finance it, you're talking about teaching finance management.
I'm talking about knowledge as an asset instead of a physical asset. We want to talk about an intangible asset, your knowledge.
Knowledge
And no one can
asset.
take that away from you.
That's beautiful. I've heard a lot of people talking about Rich Dad Poor Dad, this book that teaches you how to finance, and you know, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we aren't taught it in the classroom. So this guy made up a bunch of money, sharing with people that this is how money actually works. It's not just buy and sell or pay and make it back. You have to learn what works for you. So finding a way that works and passing it down. I love the concept of knowledge as an asset that you will leave behind for your children so they can better take care of themselves. And it's important that we understand that whatever God gives us, we're asked to be good stewards. So even if it's a little, we can't just throw up our hands and say it's not enough. I only have 2 cents and I can't do anything with this. Budgeting is a way of making your money work for you, or you having a certain control instead of you feeling helpless and victimized, right? So first of all, I love that aspect. It's empowering, so it gives us a sense that we are responsible.
That is absolutely right. You are in control. When you budget, you are in control of your
Man.
finances. So you're already on your way to an A.
Right.
So, you mentioned the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I didn't finish reading it. I started reading it when I started doing. And so it's from all the way back then that I started learning about finances, not knowing that I would be applying. Well, of course, I had hopes to apply to my life later on, but I didn't really have any examples as to how to apply. So I had to figure out everything as the years went by. So one of the first things I learned back then was that we need to save before we spend.
We need to save before we spend.
Because we need to cater for ourselves, our family. We need to make sure that we're secure after our job pays us and we spend our money. What happens if an emergency comes up?
So you're saying when we get paid, the first thing to do is to take out the savings?
Yes, the first thing
Wow.
we need to do is to take out our savings and put it in a savings account.
I don't know if I'm gonna pass this class. Okay.
Right, so budgeting will help you along with that. And I created this budgeting journey workbook that you have the workbook.
Oh, this is the workbook.
Yeah, this
Alright.
is a free printable that I've shared with anyone who I have on my email address. If anybody wants to leave their email address with you, they could always pass it on to me and I can send a copy to this. It's my hopes that I can get at least 1 or 2 copies in each library around the country. I have to reach out to the National Library Service for that. So I just reviewed it the other day. I completed this in the end of July. I reviewed it the other day and it's like, wow, it's really good stuff for beginners.
Right. And there's a table in here, and everything, income, expenses.
It helps you step by step to create a budget, and then it gives you information to know that
bills.
you need to adjust your budget every now and then when you have a lifestyle change or if you make a big purchase or so.
Okay. I thought budgets weren't supposed to be changed. You know, like it's once you make it, you stick to it. Like that's it.
Right. So that's probably what gets a lot of us overwhelmed, that we were already used to one budget and then something happens. Maybe I bought a vehicle. Now I have to include an expense for gas.
Because things change.
Things
Variables
change.
change. So you have to
Yes.
adjust. That makes sense.
So as you mentioned, we have to make our money work for us. So we can move now into
I'm ready. I have my
know
pen
you've
and
been
paper.
ready.
Yes, I want to know how this stuff works.
Okay, so a budget is, like I mentioned earlier, it's an estimate of your income and expenses for a future period of time. So you personally can decide to budget monthly. You can decide to budget every 2 weeks ahead. You can decide to budget for every week ahead.
Does it make sense to budget daily?
You can do that, yes, micro scale. If you are you of course want to make a larger budget, maybe a larger scale, maybe by your paycheck, you know how much you're getting paid for every 2 weeks. And then break it down to days. Yes, you have to find what works for you. So if you say you budget, just for example, say you budget $250 for food for the month. Just say for an example, I pick a weird number. Try dividing that by 4 weeks, right? So that would be the amount that you have for each week to spend on food, maybe, if that's how you choose to do it. And then if you want to break that down by day.
Okay, I'm asking because I'm trying to get the concept of budgeting. If you do it daily, is it really a budget? Are you planning? Because you know, we get our money, and then as children, the first thing we do is that you get your $3, maybe $5. I don't know who may get more money than $5 a day, but you get your little money, and then you figure out how you're gonna spend that daily. And so we have people who get paid daily too.
So you can think about it from the night before, you know, when planning,
Okay.
you want to write out your to-do list from the night before. It's the same with your finances. You can think from the night before what you need to spend money on tomorrow. What will you save?
So it's planning. That's the key component. Whether you get paid every day or 2 weeks or a month, the important thing is that there is a plan.
Right.
Right. So once you're not making a plan on how your money is going to be divided or spent, then you're not budgeting. Okay.
So, in other words, like I mentioned earlier, budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went.
Where it went straight through the lot of holes in my pocket.
So when you budget, like I
Oh,
mentioned earlier,
lovely.
that's on personal preference. You can budget monthly, bi-weekly, or by your paycheck. Like you said, maybe persons get paid every day, every week. Some people might only purchase when there is an important event coming up, or you can have your regular budgets, like if you budget monthly or bi-weekly, and then when there's an important event coming up like Christmas, you can budget ahead for the Christmas season.
So I guess we all have our Christmas list already, but do we have our budget?
And why do you budget, or why should you budget? Like I mentioned earlier, we need to be able to help ourselves. Our job won't help us at the end of the day. They already paid us, right? So it's what we do with our money that will help us to create a better future. So budgeting would allow us to manage our expenses, to prepare for any unexpected expenses that we may have. We have vehicles, we have homes. Something might happen that we need to have repaired, or something breaks and we need to fix it. And that can cause a lot of stress on us. One of the key components to budgeting is to cater to your peace of mind.
Peace of mind.
So once you budget and you know you have money allocated for this, you have money in your savings, you feel okay when something comes up. You won't feel flustered, overwhelmed, pressured, stressed, because you have it. You're already taking control of your finances.
All right, good.
So some examples of personal finance goals. Are there any expenses that you want to save up for in the future?
I know I save for no expenses.
Do you have an emergency fund set up for unexpected savings? One important one. Can I save toward my retirement fund? That's very important. A lot of people are passing the age of retirement and they're still seeking employment. At that time, you
Wow.
want to be relaxed. I mean, at this time, I want to be relaxing
time,
already,
no.
right? So imagine you work all these years and you're not able to relax, enjoy maybe your grandchildren, or travel the world, or travel the country, because you have to work just to keep a roof over your head, just to have your living expenses covered. Yes, there's social security benefits.
Yeah.
That's not enough. I don't think that's enough for most people, especially now that the cost of living keeps going up, or salaries either remain the same or they keep decreasing. So, yeah.
I want to ask our viewers something. And you answer me. Maybe at the end of the program, we'll have a response. But we're talking about saving for retirement, and then you're probably wondering, is saving even biblical? Like, won't God take care of us? Like, should we even be saving? That's like a slap in the face of God by saying, like, I can take care of myself. I can manage this money. Is saving and budgeting a biblical principle? Tell me what you think and leave it in the comments, and then we'll get back to those responses.
Okay, so another useful way to save for a retirement fund is purchasing insurance, life insurance. You know, have something for your family later on in the future. I'm not an insurance expert, but I have spoken with one, and that's you have to go around and shop and find what works for you. So, are we ready to get into how to budget?
Long time. A long time. I want to get into it, but I think we might have a break coming up shortly. So I want our viewers to stay with us. We've done the theory. We've talked about why it's important, what a budget is. And we kind of touched, and I got you to think about a little bit. Is it this whole concept saving life insurance? Is it actually necessary? Is it biblical? So when we come back, definitely we'll need our pen and papers. We're going to go through the actual template, your income, your expenses, and to see what works. So right after this break, we'll be right back.
All my life, I've been dealing with projects. I do a lot of research. Basically try to understand how different materials affect fires. It involves a lot of formulas and gathering data. I met this girl once in grad school, and we got to talk about all kinds of things and also about God. It was great. I could share with her what I believed in. And then I got busy with my own research and realized I may have treated her like a project. Like, I kind of expected her to change herself. But people are so much more than projects. There's some kind of human connection to it. I think we're supposed to share our lives with those around us, but sometimes just being with them, being their friend, that's the best way to find true connection. And that's what witnessing is to me, relationships and friendships.
According to the Center for Disease Control, men die on average 5 years earlier than women, while women are expected to live an average of 81 years at birth. Men are expected to live an average of 76 years, with non-Hispanic blacks having the lowest life expectancy at nearly 71 years compared to white and Hispanic males. That's a fact, but there's hope. One of the factors contributing to worse health in men is the higher prevalence of cigarette smoking among males than among females at any age. By quitting the habit, males can reduce their chances of dying from any cause and experience a longer and happier life. So don't delay, quit today.
Avoid becoming totally obsessed by every changing statistic. You know, if we sit and watch every change, we're going to continue to become saddened, desperate, and hopeless. We need to be informed. We can't be the proverbial ostrich ignoring the situation, but we can look towards things more hopeful. Develop an attitude of gratitude. For everything and in every day, there is some reason to be thankful. And I'm thankful for the privilege of being able to share these thoughts with you, because as you may be thinking many thoughts that are similar to mine, we need to share positive and meaningful thoughts and options.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the short break. It's good to have you. And again, to our viewers on YouTube, on Facebook, and even those watching on channel 98, we hope that you're enjoying the program so far. We have with us Miss Angelia Guy. All right, she started her own small business. In not really it is a business, but it's a finance initiative that's helpful for everyone. She's teaching us her journey with budgeting, and she's sharing with us what works for her. So again, the title of this program is Budgeting Simplified, and we hope that you've been enjoying it so far. I have just a few comments. Pastor Denny, thank you for joining us. Pastor Denny says, tithes and offering helps with budgeting because God blesses what we remain with. So the 10% rule, 10-90. All right, you take out your 10%, and then how do we budget essentially as Christian? The 90%. So budgeting is a function of good stewardship. You know, you can't build a house without planning and counting the cost before. So how do we break down this 90%? Miss Angelia?
Okay. So As you mentioned, we're going to my evolution of my budgeting journey.
Mhm.
So at first, when I started budgeting anyway, and when I first started working, I budgeted. I just wrote down what my expected expenses would be for the month ahead, and how much the expense would be more or less, because some expenses are what we call variable. They might not be the same every month. And so I would just write a list of my expenses and then either do a mental calculation or use my calculator to see that it does not exceed my income, that I have enough money coming in to be able to cover my expenses. And that's just how I did it in the beginning.
I like your little scribblings.
Yes, this is how
I'm not sure how many of our little books have this little imagery on it with the little expenses and income, but you graduated from this concept.
Yes, like I mentioned, I like to write things out to see it. Right? So that's how I started. That's how I still do it. I still write it out to see how I'm doing.
I want to make a note of that because initially I thought I could budget in my mind.
No,
You need to put pen
you
to
need to
paper.
see. You could actually write it or put it on a computer in an Excel spreadsheet if you like computer.
So don't try to trick yourself. You can't just say, oh, this is money I make, this is money I make, and calculate it in my mind. The plan is a written plan. It's a blueprint for how this month is gonna run, right? So don't be like me.
Right, because there's another component that I learned over the past couple of years, especially during COVID. I got to watch a lot more YouTube. I learned more that there's more to budgeting than just knowing that my income can cover my expenses. Of course, I always tried to list my savings as a top expense because that's money going out, right? So when you have now your budgeted amount for the month, you also want to track your expenses to be able to write down what your actual expenses were. And so when you write down what your actual expenses are, you can be able to compare the amount you budgeted and the amount you spent. So if you ended up spending less than what you budgeted, then you have some leftover money and you want to decide what will you do with that money. That's up to you. You can put that towards a goal or save it, right?
You said something just now, and I have to catch it. You said budgeting is not simply knowing that your income exceeds your expenses. And for many of us, or not many of us, maybe for some of us, it's comforting to know that it doesn't matter what my expenses are. I know my income is sufficient enough to cover those expenses. But you said tracking your expenses is important to plan with future projections of maybe account for some of those variable changes, things that might happen, emergency and stuff like that. And I remember I was trying to do my budgeting thing, and I downloaded a budgeting app that manages, and you calculate your expense, and I'm plugging my receipts, and I'm put everything in, and that was so depressing because my expenses always exceed my income, and then I just stopped using it because it doesn't make no sense. I said to myself, this is not working. You put in gas, you put in food, you put in wali food on the side, extra fun time, and it just not a give, and this just makes me sad every time I have to track my expenses. So I just stop, right? But it's important that you do that, because then you see where you have needs, where you have gaps, and how you can maybe pull from other places. Where you miss the whole process when if you feel like me, right, and you get caught up with all the expenses.
Exactly. So, like you mentioned, I always try to make sure that my income would cover my expenses. But sometimes, for some of us, that's not always the case. Sometimes we have much more expenses than our income can cover. So, when we write them out and we list them with the figures beside them, we can be able to say, oh, where can I cut back some expenses? And what do I need? What are needs versus what are wants, right? So budgeting, and like I mentioned earlier, you want to check in regularly to review your budget if anything changed, or to make a change to be able to live more comfortably.
Right. Like you said, it's the reality of many that their expenses will always exceed their income. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't make sense that you budget. It just means that you have to make decisions and you have to make sacrifice. You have to decide what's going to be priority at this time, for this point in time, until something else. So it's a lot of decision making, and it's it's much harder than just letting things work themselves out and then you stay stuck in a cycle.
Right.
But budgeting is actually decision making, planning, and all of those stuff that you don't want to do at the end of the day, right?
Right. I believe in deciding to make short term sacrifices for a better future in the long term.
Yeah.
So maybe just for 3 months, maybe for 6 months, I need to cut out some expenses, and then later on I can enjoy those again. But imagine if I keep those expenses, I might not be able to enjoy them in the future because I didn't, you know, moderate myself now, right?
And like you said, you can cut and take from there. But remember, you're not alone. God, you gave back God his 10%. You sit down, you pray about it. You say, God, you know my situation and my finance. Help me, give me the wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding to figure out what can I do without or not do without, or and your blessings will come, but it also has to be a prayerful planning as well. And that's going to separate your budgeting as a Christian person to see how God blesses us, the windows being open and poured out because we're diligent, we're faithful in the little things. So if you're feeling overwhelmed right now about your income, your expenses, or you don't even have a job that we can call income is coming in, you can still make a decision to get on your knees and pray about it so that God can allow for things to work out in your favor. And when he blesses you, then you learn how to manage that blessing. So it's not necessarily budgeting and saving up for a future. And God said you don't know if you're going to live tomorrow. It's about planning, managing your blessings, right?
Right.
I see you have a spreadsheet, not a spreadsheet. What's this here?
Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, some of your expenses are not always the same every month. We call those your variable expenses. And then you have your fixed expenses. Those are the same every month. Maybe your rent, if you're paying mortgage or school fees, insurance, those are things that you pay the same amount every month. Versus groceries, your utility bills, those are expenses that would change from month to month, right? And then you also have your additional expenses that would come up. Those would be your unplanned or unexpected expenses. You also want to include those in your budget, and not meaning you planned ahead for them because they might be unplanned. So you want to write them as an actual amount that you spend. That's why you need to separate your budget into your budgeted amount and your actual amount. So you can track, okay, I budgeted this, but then something came up this month and I had to spend on this. So you add that line item, I had to buy tires or a tire. I put that as an actual amount that I spent this month. So here I have a list of budget categories.
Okay, let's have a look.
Each person will have their own categories. This is not an exhausted list, so there are a lot of categories that might not be up there that some people would have in their budget. But for some examples, you have housing, which would be like your rent, your mortgage, or property taxes. You have children, education expense, daycare, school, transportation, food, utilities. Those are all wide budget categories that you can group your expenses under.
All right, so general categories include family, school. So you break them up into larger you start with the big categories and then you go micro, or
you start with what your expenses are, like your small expenses, and then you can categorize them so that later on you can, if you have a category for housing, that's important. You need a roof to lay your head under, right? So that's important. Versus fun money, that might not be, that comes under entertainment. Maybe you can cut out your money for entertainment. Now, this just caters for other people. Some people like to budget by categories, like you mentioned, the 90-10% rule. So if you want to budget for that 90% now, some people prefer to do it, break it up again in different percentage. There's the 50-30-20% rule, where you you cater 20% towards savings of any sort. You can combine your emergency savings with your retirement fund. Any savings goes in that category. Your 30% would be for wants, and then the 50% would be for needs. So that's how some people choose to do it.
50% is for needs, bills, utilities.
Yes.
30 is for
wants.
wants, and then
20% for your savings.
for savings. 20% is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. So that's why you have to find what works for you. You could start with 5%. You could start. I personally don't use the percentage pie chart. I use a number.
Okay.
So I pick a number what I can start with, and then when it comes to saving and saving a number, saving an amount or a percentage, you want to start where you feel comfortable starting, and then it builds a habit, and then you get to end. You see that you can do it, so you get a happy feeling from it, and you get to go on. You say, okay, maybe next month I can try saving more. I can try cutting out, maybe not buying a smoothie this month.
I think that's what discouraged
Just a week.
when I was using the budget planner. I just kept saying expensive, but then you said start. You said start. Even if it's small, if it's 2% or 5%, you pay
$5.
$5. I'm not gonna touch this $5. This is for savings. Identify what you're saving for. Like you said earlier, you have personal financial goals. You can't make a plan for something that you don't have a plan about. If you're going to save and save aimlessly, you're not going to save. I need to be saving towards something specific. It needs to have an endpoint. You need to visualize where you want to go. And that's why budgeting is uncomfortable for many people, because they don't want to take time to create that long-term vision. You just live in that short-term cycle, right? So I'm glad that you said that, because for me, unless I know exactly what I'm going to save for a computer. This $5, it's not going to go a long way, and then you don't think about how long it will take.
Yeah.
Because eventually you're going to increase that. But if you think about saving $5 a week for a computer that costs $500, and you calculate how long you have to get your computer, just start. Just start.
And it's rewarding to know that you actually saved to buy something you wanted,
Right.
or you needed. It's rewarding. So we can start with creating our budget now.
Okay.
So we want to take some time, write down a list of our expenses for the month, or however, how do you want to budget? If you want to budget for the month, for the week, for every 2 weeks, you write down a list of the expenses that you usually spend for that time frame. Just the name of the expense, like your rent, food, groceries, any utilities, your car.
So you guys should be writing, okay?
Yes, any of those expenses, you write them out. Once you have listed all your expenses for the
have to take long because
period of time,
expenses.
You would want to write beside them if they are fixed expenses or variable expenses, because it's important to identify right away if they're fixed or variable.
Right. I don't, and then you just doing this makes you be able to see some solutions, because you see some fixed expenses here. I'm writing this down, and a fixed expenses gas for this vehicle. I'll change this into not an expense and ride my bicycle, right? Like you can already see, just having the visual, how can you transform some of these fixed expenses?
So gas is actually more of a variable expense. So okay, so we need to grasp the concept of fixed and variable. So fixed, it just means it's the same amount every month. Yes,
but I will pay gas every month.
You will pay every month, but it might not be the same amount. So it comes under variable expense.
So if I say I only put in this amount of gas for the month, I want it done with ride the bicycle, then it becomes a fixed
that's
expense.
up to you. That's up to you.
Yes. Okay, well, this is a fixed expense.
And then you can take it a step further and list beside each expense if it's a want or a need.
Okay.
If you want. And then beside the expense, you want to list the amount that you usually expect to spend for the month. So you know your rent and so on, your fixed expenses, those have a fixed number, so you can easily write those out. But when it comes to like your water, your light, electricity, those might vary, so you want to estimate an amount for the month based on your past few months. And that's the thing with budgeting. When you're a first-time budgeter, you need to take a few months to trial and error before you can actually come up with what would be your, what I call your base budget. So what would stick with you every month. And then every month you adjust. Maybe next month you have an expense that wouldn't normally occur. Maybe vehicle insurance. That doesn't occur every month, right? You pay that by every 3 months or every year, right? So those are different things that you really need to check in with your budget every time. Okay. So on the screen now we have a template from my budget planner just to make everything in a table format. That's what we mentioned. Your expenses that you would have for the month ahead or for the 2 weeks ahead, and what would be your budgeted amount, and you write down when they're due so that you can keep a track of when you pay it and when it's due, right?
I remember one of the things, maybe you didn't mention it, but I heard you say, is that sometimes we tend to be strict with our budgeting, and then when we do that, we end up not we end up overspending because we were too strict in the beginning, so that when we have to actually take out, then we just splurge, you know. And so when I'm looking at that table, I can already see that I put my budget, and then I put my actual expense, and when you budget, you're strict with it. Like you said, I'm going to put this much, and then you start really really high, and then you're not able to sustain that, and then that becomes frustrating. So it's like a diet. You set this real goal, and I'm gonna lose 20 pounds, and then you wanted to start smaller at maybe 10 pounds, 5 pounds, and then because you're not able to get up to that mark, then you just man, like I just eat my
It's important if you're a first time budgeteer, or if it's the first time you're putting pen to paper, actually planning it out. Give yourself grace, take a few months to track your expenses, see what you actually spend on each month, and from there you have an idea of what your budget can be for future months.
Right, good stuff. So important lessons about budgeting and saving.
Like you mentioned earlier, you don't want to constrict yourself when budgeting. If you're too strict, you might spend more, right? So you just feel sometimes you just feel just like with the COVID situation, people felt so locked up during the time of lockdown that when places started opening up, everyone wanted to go everywhere, and it was unsafe still, but they weren't thinking about that. They were just thinking, I'm locked up, I want to be free. It's the same. It's your mind. It's a part of your mental health as well. Remember, I mentioned earlier, you want to cater to your peace of mind when budgeting.
Right. And your peace of mind also has to do with living within your means. You know, some of us live above our means, and that's the reason why budgeting is such a chore, because we want to be able to do this and do that. But you're going to get there, but you're not going to get there if we continue to keep up with the Joneses, right? So we need to be realistic again. I'm saying all this because I'm talking.
Right. So one of the biggest reasons I budget is because I want to create a better future. Meaning I want to create a better future than where I am today. Not comparing myself to someone in the past, but create a better future from where I am today. I want to be able to live with peace of mind in the future, and make sure, or at least know that my children, their children's children will be okay.
I think it's crucial to recognize that budgeting, the whole end point is to create change. Even though we're not making the amount of money and we manage our basic funds, there's no change, and we're familiar with that, so we're comfortable with just living, needs, bills, and so there's no real change that occurs. But when you budget, you should be seeing changes. Maybe not big change, but you should be able to see change. And some of us are not comfortable with change. We don't like that we're living from paycheck to paycheck. We're so used to it that going outside of it creates tension. And so budgeting becomes a real chore. But when we focus on your creating change for the future, you want to be at a different place, then it's a little more because we can visualize that, then it becomes a little more easier. And I can see that from myself, because I'm already used to just take out the light, just take out the water, just take out this and that. And then when you have to go and figure out how you are squeezing, even though you want it, you have to go and figure out how would you make this happen to have this thing that you want. That's a lot of work, man. Like I just pay my bills and that's it.
And then you end up feeling deprived.
Right.
So just like with saving, budgeting is the same. It might feel like a chore in the beginning, but the more you do it, the more you get used to it, the more you see that you can do it. Right? You can do it. So I have now showing some saving challenges that I found on
we need to put this up on the screen. We have to put this up on the screen.
Right. So I have this um, to show some savings challenges that might cater to our
Right.
spot salaries and wages that we earn in Belize. A lot of times the internet will have things that cater to the US. You know, they make way more money than we do. So these are some examples that I thought might be fairly easier. Don't want to use the word easy, but fairly doable for us in our country.
I like
And you can even change these things instead of every day saving that every 2 days or every week putting something. So at the end of a time period you will have more.
I like the emergency fund because a lot of us we do enjoy Christmas and we want to be able to not have to think about the burden of really be able to do something special for this loved one. So with this emergency fund that you have here, you just swap the label. It's already in Christmas colors or colors, right?
You can have a
So in January
savings fund.
Right, January you try to save $60, February $75, so that by December you don't even realize, but you have $1,000 to spend just on helping. If it's giving, you want to give, or if you want to bless a family. I love this plan. I will try, but I will try much smaller.
Yeah, you can
$60
just to what suits you. So like you said, there's this term called sinking funds for the viewers. If you want to look up sinking funds, those are the things you want. If you want to save for Christmas, you want to save for your vehicle insurance, you can start doing that every month so that when the time comes up, you can save for you can have the money available when you need it.
Okay, I see you have another template here for Christmas planning. This one is for a meal plan.
Right. So of course we need our Christmas dinner, right? So if we know that some of us have gone through pay cuts, maybe job losses this year, we want to plan in advance of our Christmas dinner, right? We want to budget how much we can put towards it. So write down a list of what we want to eat, what we really want to eat, and then have an estimate of what we would spend and try and keep to it so that we can plan ahead, if I need to get this amount of money for it. Or
I love this. A lot of us trying to do small initiatives during the holiday to help feed families or bless our neighbors. So when you create even a budget for this small scale event, then it is clearer how much you can give, how further you can stretch it. So it's to just have that plan, have it written, have it somewhere you can go back. And then the next time you do this initiative, you have a base to work from. So I absolutely love the different templates. And as we're winding down, I don't want our viewers to leave without, knowing that they can actually purchase, if they're interested, these planners from you. You've created an entire booklet, with all these wonderful templates in them, the notes. We didn't get to go through half of it. All right, but I want to share these budget planners with you. They're really good. You can contact us. You can contact Miss Angelia. What's her number, sis?
626-626-09.
009. So you can, and she has a Facebook page. She has an Instagram page. And then you can look through all the different assortments of the different planners she has. She has the big ones, the small ones. And I think it's a good initiative to get your children starting to plan and save. You can get some of the little tiny ones. You make kid-friendly ones yet?
Not yet.
So you can start thinking about that, right? So I really hope that our viewers were blessed by this program. And of course, I always want to invite people back a second time. So if it's possible that we can come back and do this another time, we can think about, how can we plan and budget for different things. So guys, you want to buy those Christmas gifts, you want to bless families, you want to be able to plan for these things. Planning is the key. God didn't give us our resources to just squander, or to just have them in front of us looking pretty. What happened to the man with the one talent and he buried it and just had it there? That did not end well. Everything is an investment. So budgeting is your way of creating an investment plan to afford the things that you want and need, right? So, Sister Angelia, we didn't get to go through everything, but time is upon us. What are some of your major closing thoughts before we do?
Okay, so like we've been mentioning, to see writing out our budget to see what expenses we can cut back. We might also remember that we can also add expenses if we want to, if our budget allows for it. Maybe we took out fun a couple months ago, so we want to put in back some fun money this month. You know, it's room, plan ahead, set your goals, write them out. When you write things out, you can see them clearly and be able to plan for them. Budgeting is all about planning.
And when I need to squeeze this in, people, I didn't even get to talk about the cash envelope. So while you're shopping, you know, you have your wallet with you, and she makes these amazing little pockets in your wallet that fit in, and you have grocery lists on it. You put in your money. You have
in your wallet.
and you fit right in your wallet. You also have
colors.
what are the different items? You know, like the budgeting categories, and fit right in your wallet. You only take out money from it. When the money's done, stop spending. All right, so I'm gonna invite you back. We need to talk about these cash inflows. We need to do a kids version, and we're just going to have so much fun with this topic. All right. So, do you think you can join us again next week, sis?
I will have to check my schedule and see.
God is the glory. That's good for me. Viewers, I hope that you're blessed by this program. Again, share the link. You know, I'm sure that there's something one of your children, your family members could learn. And again, it was a delight to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining Defining Your Health. Hope you have a wonderful day.